Today, we're going to talk about trust and transparency. Trust and transparency are two things you have to master as a leader if you want to have, first of all, people respect your leadership. And secondly, if you want to get any leadership results. If you are unable to master either trust or transparency, then you will suffer. You will not get results and you will work for free. And I guess the whole point of this is that you don't work for free forever. You're going to have some things that set you back, as we all do in sales and leadership, but you want to be paid a lot for your time. And if you're not being paid a lot for your time as a salesperson, it just means you can't sell. And if you're not being paid a lot for your time as a leader, it means you can't lead. And it's all it means. It just means you can't do it because somebody has to pay you. And if they're paying for your time and you're not delivering, then they're going to stop paying for your time. We pay for results. You have to deliver to get paid, and you want to succeed. So trust and transparency. Let's talk about that. So one of the first things that I teach to rookies, and this has to be taught to rookie leaders as well, is the first thing that is important to know about trust is you have to communicate and mutually agree to commitments from both sides. I'll repeat that. You have to communicate and mutually agree to commitments from both sides. Let's use this example in sales. If a client says, "Can you call me tomorrow?" and you say, "Okay," you've made a commitment to call that client tomorrow. But the client has not made a commitment back to you. And that's a problem. The lack of a mutual commitment is a problem because you'll call the client tomorrow and you already know they're not going to pick up. And you can feel bad about it, but the client never committed that they would pick up. So for you to make a commitment to call them tomorrow and for the client to make no commitment back to you, it's your fault that you've set yourself up for failure because the client promised you nothing and you made a promise in return for nothing. You promised to do something in return for no promise back. You have agreed to work for free, and congratulations, you have worked for free. You got exactly what you signed up for. And I'm sometimes mesmerized by how many people will keep repeating that mistake and continue to make promises and keep their promises with no promise coming back to them. And so they continue to work for free forever. And you see this with bad salespeople. They're constantly, quote unquote, following up. And all following up means, which is why I hate these words, all following up means is working for free because you made a commitment to do something without getting a commitment back. So the way to alleviate this problem is very simple. Is when a prospect says, "Can you call me tomorrow?" You know, in our case, if we both or a client says, "Call me tomorrow," you either confront it or you get a promise back. It's like, "Hey, what time can I call you tomorrow that you promise you'll pick up my call? What time can I call you tomorrow that you promise you'll pick up my call?" Now, if you're a rookie listening to this, don't say that because you don't know the situation to apply that in. I'm talking about clients, specifically existing clients, and specifically about matching commitments. And usually, you know, the answer back is like, "Well, I don't know, just try me at 4." And I'm not going to say okay to that. I'll say, no. If I make a commitment to call you when you tell me to call you, you have to make a commitment to pick up. Do we have a deal? And for me, like that's the point. Like if they're not going to commit, then they're obviously not going to pick up. So like I'm not going to agree to work for free. It's just not an agreement I'm going to make because I know what happens next. And that's the first part of trust is you have to have a mutual agreement. Now, when you're working with your rookies, it's very simple. It's like, "Hey, you need to get 20 cards today. Your goal, your mission, your purpose, and your quota is to get 20 business cards floating today. And I'm going to look at those cards. So you have my promise that I'm going to help you, call them. I'm going to help you work through them. But you have to get those 20 cards today. Do we have a deal?" And the rookie says, "I'll try." And it's like, well, here's the thing, man. I don't get paid if you don't succeed. And I don't want to work for free. And so for me to be willing to invest my time and energy into you, I need you to invest the time and energy back into your career. So can we make a commitment that by the end of the day today, you're coming back with at least 20 business cards from floating? Do we have a deal? And they have to commit. And they'll say, "Sure." Okay, so we have a deal. Just to confirm, we have a deal, right? We have a deal. So now we have 2 promises. That's trust. And somebody that's unwilling to keep a promise back to you, you need to ask yourself, do I want to work with this person? Do I want to work with a person where we had a deal and they didn't keep the deal? Now, one thing I want to point out here when it comes to trust is that people will try to screw you on the deal by making, like, let's say, doing the deal, but then clearly undermining the spirit of the deal. So they'll come back with 20 cards and they'll be like, the security guard at the building, the barista at Starbucks. Oh, there was a business card that was like, at the front desk from the receptionist. So I got that card. And they'll say, well, you said 20 cards and I got 20 cards. And this comes back again to trust. And I have had salespeople, I've had prospects do that to me where they obviously, like, quote unquote, keep the deal, but they undermine the spirit of the deal. I've had leaders do that when they try to get paid for work they obviously didn't do or did a terrible job at. And they try to hold me up to a technicality to get paid, even though they clearly know they didn't keep the spirit of the deal. And when that happens, I say, fuck you. Fuck you. Like, if you come back to me and you quote unquote technically kept the deal but found a way to screw it, it's very clear to me, number one, that you had no intent to keep your deal, so you did break the deal. And number two, you want to double screw me by lying about it. Fuck you. I don't play these games. And by the way, if you're playing these games with your leadership, where you're trying to scratch dollars out of something that you clearly didn't do a good job at, then fuck you. Like, I will make sure that I will never work with you again on any reasonable level because you are not a trustworthy person. Have you ever had somebody, by the way, that tried to use a technicality to screw you twice, where they didn't keep the deal, and on top of that, they try to lie about it and still scratch something from you? It's like, it doesn't work that way. And it's obvious to everyone, but it's not always obvious to the person trying to screw you because that person may not have a moral compass. And you need to confront that early, and you need to confront that often, and you need to make it very clear that that is not acceptable. Because when you're screwed on a deal, this is the second part of trust that I see is when people get screwed on a deal, they don't ever hold the other party responsible, and it hurts them. So you call the prospect back. Say a prospect says, call me tomorrow, I'll give you a credit card. You're like, okay. You call them for a few days, they don't pick up. And then finally you call from a different number and they pick up. And you're like, hey, did you remember to send the money? And that's the wrong way to approach it. Why would I chase you on a broken promise? I would do it differently. We had a deal that this thing was going to get done at this time and it wasn't done. Why wasn't that commitment kept? That's actually what I say. So if a prospect says, hey, I'm going to show up, I'll see you tomorrow at 3, and we both agree and it's clearly communicated, I show up at 3 and they're not there. When I call them, I'm like, hey, I didn't see you. I call them like, hey, Henry, you told me that we're going to be together at 3 o'clock today at your office. Now, I paid for a taxi and I came to your office at 3 o'clock today, but you weren't there. Why didn't you keep our commitment? I will actually hold prospects responsible for breaking a deal. Hold people responsible for breaking a deal. If it's a rookie, it's like, hey, you told me you were going to get 20 cards and you got 15 cards. Why didn't you keep your promise? Why did you break your commitment? And that's a fair question because and they might say, well, I say, it's like whatever they say, we'll come to that. But it's like, I have the right to hold you responsible if you didn't keep your promise to me. I have the right to do that, and I'll take that right. Now, you can respond with accountability and you can rectify it, or you can, gaslight me. Oh, well, I'm busy, but you shouldn't talk to me like that. What do you mean I shouldn't talk to you like that? I'm busy too. I took a taxi. I paid for it. I took time to see you. We actually had this situation with Tommy Fury last week when we showed up at his house at noon on Friday to film, and he wasn't home. And then his manager texted me to leave the suits with security. And I called Tommy Fury's manager and I said, I'm not leaving the suits with security, and we have a problem. And the problem is we had a commitment for a photo shoot at noon. I bought airplane tickets. I went out here. I pushed it to noon on your request, even though it meant that I couldn't fly home tonight and catch my son's hockey game. And now he's not here, and you need to make up for it right now because we're going to have a big problem if you don't keep your commitment. Because you owe me, and you know you owe me. He understood. Now, it would have been easy, and it was fixed very quickly. Now, it would have been easy. It would have been easy for him to gaslight me and say, oh, well, he's very busy. It's like he didn't do that because I'm dealing with a professional here. And I found out that I was. And if I wasn't, we'd have some different problems. But you make a commitment. You agree on a mutual commitment. Both sides agree to their part. It has to be mutual. There has to be a commitment from both sides. And if the commitment's not kept, you call it out. And you ask him, why wasn't it kept? We had a commitment. And that keeps things very clear. We had a commitment. we had a commitment. Why wasn't it kept? Now, keep in mind, once again, that if somebody tries to get you on a technicality of a commitment, even though they clearly failed their part of the commitment. I had this situation recently as well. And I had to talk to a leader very directly about it, that the leader did not do their job. They did not keep their commitment, no matter how much of a technicality they tried to get me on. It was apparent to everyone that the commitment was not kept from the leader's side. And I told the leader that I'm not going to acquiesce and relent on a commitment that was broken from their side. And you have to be willing to walk away from a nasty client when the nasty client does not keep their commitments and tries to play you. And I think that's really, really important in leadership, that you make transparent commitments. Now, as a leader, the bigger problem probably is that, A, the leader doesn't keep their own commitments. And when you don't keep your own commitments, like the commitments you publicly make to the company, then the rookie doesn't expect that they need to keep their commitments to you. You've probably noticed that by now. If you say your commitment is 20 floats or 20 QBs and you get 17, the rookie will not see it in any way their responsibility to keep the commitment they made with you. Even if they don't tell you, in the back of their mind, they're thinking, why should I tell you? Why should I do what I told you I would do when you don't do when you say what you'll do? So that has to be a function of transparency. You have to keep your commitments. It's very simple. Show me somebody who can't lead, and I'll show you somebody who doesn't know how to keep their commitments. Show me somebody that can't influence, and I'll show you somebody that has a problem communicating transparently and clearly and building mutual commitments from both sides. So when I hire people, I sit down, I say, here's what you can expect from me, and then I follow through on it. Here's what I need you to promise that I can expect from you for this to work. If you're unwilling to keep your commitments, we will not work together. If you're unable to keep your commitments, but you're willing to, you're working hard, then I'm going to help you get better. And you have to commit that you're going to take the time and responsibility and the energy that it takes to get better, because results are an expectation, not a bonus. If you can't keep your commitments, we won't work together. If you're unable to keep your commitments, we'll work together until I make a decision that perhaps you're just not able. And this happens with leaders sometimes. Sometimes leaders want to do better, but they just aren't able to execute. And let's talk about this as the second part. What do you do with a prospect that says they'll show up and doesn't? They own it, and then they say they'll show up, and they again don't show up. And then they again don't show up. A track record establishes the expectation for the future. It's the only, people might say that the past is not the future, but it's the only measure we have. So the past becomes how we judge your future. If you consistently underdeliver as a leader, our expectation is you will continue to underdeliver, and our resources will go to somebody who delivers, period. It has to be that way. If your client consistently doesn't show up to a meeting, you will not cancel other meetings to see that client, knowing that you might have canceled on somebody and that guy didn't show up on you, and then you're doubly screwed. So the past predicts the future. When making judgments about a person's behavior, we look at their past behavior. It's the best thing we can do. And it's hard to dig yourself out of that hole, man, if you dug that hole. But that's on you. That's your responsibility and nobody else's. Luckily, I've always been pretty good at getting clients. So when clients have given me a hard time, I've simply replaced them with other clients, and I've moved on without thinking about it twice. As we gain more leadership capability in our company with better leaders, we start to look away from people who have an inconsistent or bad track record, and we continue to invest in people who have a great track record. When presidents are made, so are bums. Because when we give our resources to better people, we take them away from worse people, and I'm committed to doing that. I am committed to taking resources away from people who don't deliver, because I want to give all the resources to people who deliver. I am an unapologetic capitalist. I will not have a middle class in our company. I am fighting to eliminate equality in our company. You will get the opportunity, but not everyone will finish the same. We're a capitalist sales organization. So I look at past behavior to determine future behavior, and I look at one other thing. The last thing. The last thing I look at is transactional friction. Transactional friction is how much energy is lost when a transaction is made. An example is when I'm working with a client and it's an easy client to work with, I'll enjoy working with that client. I'll continue to see that client. I'll invest time, energy, and money in that client. I will like to work with that client. But have you ever had a client that despite the fact that they buy, they're a pain in the ass to deal with every time. Like it's hard to get payment from them, or they want stupid alterations that don't need to be done, or they just like to win all the time. Like every transaction you have with the client, they just want to win. And if you're a good enough salesperson, well, then you know you can't wait to replace that client and you just don't call them anymore because it's hard to deal with them. They drain your energy. So even though they buy and they put numbers on your sheet, they're a pain in the ass to deal with and you're not excited to even deal with them. Who's had a client like that? A better way to approach it would be to, of course, replace those clients with clients that are easy and fun to deal with for you. Well, the same goes for leadership. There are sometimes people that you have to deal with, that I have to deal with, and I've had to deal with even in our own company, that it's very difficult to do business with them because they make it hard. Because they try to win so hard that they don't let me win. You ever have a client that tries to win so hard that they don't let you win? And when I have that in our company, the way that I react to that is just a function of how well we're doing. If we're not doing well, if we're struggling and we need those numbers, well, then you know how it is when you're in sales. You might put up with a shitty client for a while if you're not selling well, but you have to keep improving your business so that you can fire those clients. And I have to keep improving our business so that I can fire delinquent people, or at least remove them from leadership, because I don't want to waste my energy dealing with people who have a high transaction friction. I don't want to deal with people who are difficult to deal with. Do you want to deal with people who are difficult to deal with? Probably not. So I lay out the rules very clearly. I lay out the commitments very clearly. I lay out the expectations very clearly. And then I pay attention. And then I pay attention to who's keeping their promises and who's trying to game the system. And you might feel smart for gaming the system, but it's the dumbest thing you can do. Because eventually someone will come along that gets results and doesn't try to game the system, and that person gets all the business. That person gets all the resources. And all of a sudden, you're left holding an empty bag, going, what happened? What happened was you were a pain in the ass to deal with. That's what happened. And that's transparency. When I go to buy a car, I tell the salesman one thing. I say, look, I'm not looking for the best price you've ever given. I just don't want to look like an idiot when I leave this dealership. And if we can come to that arrangement, then I'll continue to buy cars from you because I know I can trust you. I've bought 4 of my last Porsches from the same guy. Because I told them I don't want the best and most amazing price. I just want it to be a fair range so that people, when they hear the price, they go, yeah, that's a reasonable price. I've also bought my last 5 watches for well over $200,000 from the same person. They were reasonable. They weren't trying to game me or one-up me. They were looking for a long-term relationship. Are you looking for a long-term relationship with your leaders? See, the first part was like selling to your rookies, right? Be accountable. Be transparent with your commitments. Make sure to call them out and confront them when the commitment's not made that both parties agree to. Now I'm talking about selling up, and you need to learn how to sell up. One of the most exciting things John Maxwell said, in my opinion, that helped me in my career early on is he said, if you want to advance, you have to be good, but also management has to like you. That's something I was lacking. I was good, but management didn't like me. And so I got passed over for opportunities for political reasons. And it took me years to understand why. Why would they want to work with me if they don't like me? Would you rather have a client that spends a little less, but you love dealing with them, versus a client that spends a little more, but just eats your energy up? Like, my energy has a price, doesn't yours? So remember this. If you want to advance, management has to like you. It's going to be the same with your rookies. If your rookies want to get more opportunities and more time with you, you have to like them. Obviously, if you don't like your rookie, good luck serving them, man. And everybody holds each other the same standard. So remember that if you want to advance, you have to get results, but management has to like you. And people that want to win all the time, that create all this transactional friction, that try to game the system and gain opportunities at a cost to me or the company, you're going to see opportunities go to people that are easier to work with. It's not political. It's like, I don't want to work with people that drain my energy because they're always trying to squeeze a little bit more out of me. Make sure that management likes you. It's important. I choose to invest in the people that are winners, that keep their promises. And as we have a funnel of new people coming in, and I only get paid when those new people succeed, I want to make sure to give those people to the leaders that will most likely get the outcome of success and help everybody win. Trust and transparency. Think long term. Keep your commitments. Communicate commitments clearly. And make sure to hold people accountable. It works. Thank you.